Tell me, does this sound familiar? Why would I pay to move to a senior living community when my mortgage is paid off? Or maybe you've heard this: senior living is way too expensive. I would never pay that much. If this sounds familiar, well, then this episode is for you. I'm your host, Valerie Borgman. We've talked about independent living in past episodes, as well as in-home care to stay living at home. And today, I'm excited to welcome Sherrel Caprio of Solstice Senior Living. We're focusing on the true cost of home ownership and the value of an independent living community.
I have a best friend who is cooking meals, taking care of dad in his house, cleaning, packing things, the whole gamut. And she's got 2 kids at home and a husband and a full-time job. And I joke with her all the time. I'm like, I think you guys are ready.
Welcome to Desperately Seeking Senior Living, a podcast for sons, daughters, grandkids, and spouses who suddenly find themselves tangled in the search for senior living and care. If you like today's episode, don't forget to subscribe and check out our doable download in today's show notes for a printable summary of the show and a bonus tip from our guest. You're listening to our doable tips, short answers to your questions. Don't see your question listed? Send us a note. Then don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an answer.
I try very hard to make sure I know where that budget falls in the beginning so that I'm not showing somebody an apartment that, let's say, has all the upgrades, the flooring, brand new cabinetry in the kitchen and bathroom. It's not fair to them. I will purposely show them things that are right around their budget area.
Do you have, I can't remember if your packet has that sort of worksheet where it says, like, here's the cost of home ownership versus, do you have that
Oh,
sheet?
yes.
I can't remember if it was in there.
Yes.
Okay.
Cost comparison worksheet, and it goes over everything from their utilities to what they're paying for yard work, what they're paying for housekeeping service, not to mention repairs and maintenance. And it's ridiculous. And I know as a homeowner, it's like once you think you're in the clear, all of a sudden there goes my dishwasher. That's actually a true story happening in my house right now. And I'm like yelling at it, like, no, not before Christmas. And for the kids,
no.
I'm like, if you want gifts, I'm like, you better hand wash some stuff for a little bit. So
That's awesome. I mean, not awesome that your dishwasher broke, but oh my God. Yes, exactly. There are so many things to consider. And so you mentioned some of them: taxes, insurance,
yes,
even if your mortgage is paid off, but some folks even still have a mortgage. And then the cost of, okay, you had dishwasher, we had a water leak in the yard. Before you know it, those costs start adding up. And of course, those cost of replacing appliances or upgrades, those things don't usually happen all at once. But still, over time, those things happen. I think that someone who has maybe paid off their mortgage may not be, they may be thinking, well, I don't have a mortgage. Why would I pay this monthly fee to a community? And not realize that, okay, well, at the community, you don't have to pay for taxes, insurance, and repairs. And another thing that we haven't talked about is if someone wants to stay in their home, sometimes that means making modifications.
yes.
That is something to consider for the future as well. And it might be totally worth it to families, and they might be able to afford putting things in like ramps and things like that. But I mean, there are so many families that I know where 2-story home, and now the family has moved mom and dad to the main floor
Yes.
because they can't do the stairs any longer. Or I had a client recently where his aunt lives in a condo, which is, so she did make that choice years ago to sort of downsize in that way, but also stairs. I had a family that the daughter was making meals, cleaning the house, providing transportation. And finally, it got to the point where it was just getting to be too much for her because she had kids at home, she had a full-time job, and it was just too much. And so they got ready to have the conversation with their mom about moving into an independent living community. And their mom was like, what? I'm fine at home. I don't need any help. And so
Yes.
and so I think that it is easy to forget that there are all of these other things going on, all of these other people in your life already helping And it's nice, I think, to move into that community setting. And now you get to enjoy your time with your children. And then, bonus, you get socialization, you get friends.
You just nailed it. I've seen the look on so many, particularly the daughters, so many daughters. I've seen that face and that look of just like complete relief when I mentioned to them, you and mom get to go and now have a more normal mother daughter relationship, because that's exactly what happens. And like you, I have a best friend who is doing the exact same thing, going and cooking meals, taking care of dad in his house, cleaning, packing things, the whole gamut. And she's got two kids at home and a husband and a full-time job. And I joke with her all the time. I'm like, I think you guys are ready. I don't think you realize what you're missing. You're missing that actual relationship. So instead of going to see dad, here's your visit, going to see dad at his place. Hey, dad, okay, what'd you have for breakfast? Okay, have you eaten? Have you done this? Have you showered? Did we take your meds? Do we need to do this? All right, well, I'm gonna go run over here and let me go to the store. You need this. Okay, I'll be back. That's how these conversations go. But when you come and visit them here, it's like, hey, how was breakfast? Oh my gosh, you're going to introduce me to your new friend, Joe, or, or Mary. And it's a different situation. They're coming in and they're enjoying their time instead of looking around thinking they need to clean the apartment. They don't. We've done it for them. They don't need to cook for them. They get to go back. And then maybe the time that's spent, like, hey, mom, let's go out to the mall or let's do something, it becomes more quality time. And folks do not realize that. I truly believe until after it happens, unless they can see it.
Yeah, exactly. Because you just get wrapped up in the doing
Yes.
of life as opposed to the living of life.
Yes.
And I literally just made that up.
I love
Like,
it.
I like said that. I'm like, well, that sounds really good.
It does. I would never have guessed that, but I'm writing this down. You just
Right? It's like a bumper sticker or something. But yeah, I do. I have seen this too. Do you feel like that initial subject of cost is more of putting up an obstacle because most folks don't want to leave their home?
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. Because of being independent living, I do find that the majority of the folks that reach out and contact us with questions are still in their home and are just doing research, and insert my air quotes around just doing research.
Yes, there are air quotes going on here.
Yes. And it's, why would I pay this? What our rent sounds like. They can be a sticker shock at first until you realize everything you're getting for that. You're now taking a vacation. That's it from everything on a regular monthly basis. Yeah, cost definitely comes up in that regard. And that's where usually my next question is, are you going to have any family that's going to be helping subsidize any of this? And that's sometimes the case, sometimes not. And then I also get into, okay, well, are you or possibly your spouse a wartime veteran? And that's when the next step comes in, and folks had no idea. I think it's only 1.3% of all veterans actually take advantage of the funds that are available to them.
That's so crazy.
I know, it's mind blowing. It's awful, in my opinion.
And what you're talking about here is the VA aid and attendance. If you aren't able to afford an independent living community, I think it is important to take a look at those resources. And hopefully, in a future episode, we're going to have some experts on that can come and really dig deep into what that is, because there are some things that you have to do to qualify. But the great news is that for those that do qualify, yes, there is this fund for the veteran and their spouse. We'll put a link to some information in show notes today, so that folks can check it out. But yeah, I agree. That's, when we're talking about can I afford independent living, that's absolutely a great resource for a lot of folks. And also, one of the things we haven't talked about is that the generation that we're working with right now.
That I think has more to do with it than anything. I really do, Valerie. So that comes up. Yes.
I have literally had families say to me, please don't send the monthly invoice to my dad. Because
Mhm.
we didn't tell him how much this costs. All we said was, "Oh, it's going to cost the same as you living at home." but without, going into all the details, which would probably
Mhm.
overwhelm their dad.
Yes.
So they're like, "Send the bill to us, and we'll make sure it gets paid."
I have a couple of residents in that exact same boat. So, yes, you are very, very correct that when you just throw out that number at first, it just seems overwhelming until you deep dive it. And then when I first started in this industry, I had sticker shock myself. Oh my gosh, how much? And now I'm like, wow, well, maybe we could technically be higher. I'm glad that we're not. I'm glad that we're one of the more moderately priced economical options within the, rented market. I'm very proud of that. But at the same time, I'm like, wow, this is a deal. Like this is you don't even realize what a deal you're getting for this one.
Yeah, exactly. That's so funny that you said that because and I think I've said this before on the show, but I literally my very first job in senior living was an independent living community. I walked in, I had these wide eyes. I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing." And then I found out how much it costs and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm not saving enough for retirement." Like, "Oops.
Yes.
I better get to saving." So, yes, there is a cost associated with independent living, but like you said, what you get in exchange for that is so huge.
When cost comes up, I think you're right. It's more of an obstacle or a barrier put in front of us because folks don't want to move. And what I've always said to them is, okay, well, what does ready look like to you? And that's usually where we start unraveling. Oh, well, I have all of this. I have all of this to undo. Okay, well, it's not just selling your home. You need to downsize. You need an estate sale. You need to get together a will. You need to get all of these things in order. Well, guess what? Let me make life easy for you. I've got an amazing partner. They help with real estate planning, downsizing, and then come to your home and decide, you know what, this is going to fit here. This won't. They can help you make modifications to your own home before you sell it to increase the value and even give you a cash advance. So I have a partner for that. And hold on, I've got a financial advisor who specializes in seniors. Sometimes folks just need the help that they didn't realize they needed.
Yes, that comes up in almost every single family talk episode. We found the people we didn't know we needed.
Yes, senior living is the one thing that we all need that nobody wants. And it's because I do believe it's the generational gap too, where and I personally was like, ooh, senior living. I don't know if I want to, get into this type of an industry because why? I had the idea of where my grandfather was back when I was a teenager. And when he had emphysema, was a wheelchair bound, my mom, we were unable to care for him at home. And I was very upset by this. But again, as a kid, I didn't understand why we were putting him someplace. And I would go and visit. And I'm just going to say it. There's a place for them, but we all have this idea of a nursing home. And I don't want to use it, but it's the bad word. It really, really is. And I also find that more and more seniors that I talk to, once I uncover what they're worried about, it it almost always comes down to that. That's where the different, facets of independent, assisted living, memory care, there's a lot bigger picture at play nowadays. The industry has changed quite a bit since back when I was a kid.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is so important because the industry that you and I work in right now didn't exist 30 years ago.
Right.
And so all of the seniors that are needing it now, they did have really bad experiences placing their parents
Yes.
or right and like you said it was a nursing home environment that is nothing like what we have now but that sticks in your mind just like it did with you.
It does.
Yeah, and it's like you said the bad word. So I absolutely see that. I feel like we have talked about so many really great things today to that if someone is like considering moving into independent living that there are some resources. I think it's important to go back and say that it is absolutely a choice, right? Like if you want to stay living in your home forever and you can make that happen, then, there are definitely services out there that can help you do that too. Honestly, I feel like I'm gonna be that way. I feel like when I'm 80, I'm gonna be like, "What do you mean?" to my son. "Caleb, if you're listening, I'm really sorry, but I'm probably gonna be like, 'Hey, I'm not ready to leave my house.'" Right? I think we're all gonna feel that way because it's your space and it's, what you become used to, and that's okay. we're not trying to convince anybody today. We're just trying to say, "Hey, have you thought about these things?" And
Yes.
especially if you are the son or daughter and you think that your mom or dad would really do well in an independent living environment, these are some of the things to consider and to maybe start that conversation. I also think visiting is a
Yes,
really good way to do that,
I
you know,
agree. I completely
talking to
agree.
other residents. And I know we've talked about that before on the show. So I think that that's really important. So, Cheryl, do you have a number one doable tip for families?
I would say the number one tip is if you're going to go out and tour in any community, do not ignore the feeling you get when you walk in. That is a real feeling. Trust your gut no matter what, no matter what. It is a real thing. And see, those are the things that aren't like the beauty salon, the amenities, your free meals, your big apartment. Those are the things that you don't see and they're not tangible, but it is a very, very real feeling. And if you have it, go with your gut and trust it.
Today's episode is brought to you by Solstice Senior Living in Renton, Washington. How did you imagine you'd spend your retirement years? Taking long weekend trips with friends? Enrolling in that art class at the local community college you've heard so many good things about? At Solstice, independent living means living a vibrant life on your terms. Find their contact information in today's show notes. Check out this episode's doable download in show notes for details, including industry terms and definitions we discussed, as well as a bonus tip from our guest. Have questions or your own tips to share? Leave us a message. We'd love to hear from you. And until next time, make it doable.